Stranus replaced in some old sections. This one, the older volumes, like this volume 17, we have 46 volumes now. So some of the old volumes, they've been updated. In fact, if you want to say use this stuff for study, you want the latest one, email us, we'll send you what we have in our computer. The one online is not so up to date. Because as you know, this transition is ongoing. So whenever we get new information, new ideas, new theories, so we just add them in. As long as I'm alive, or whoever is taking over. Now we continue our study of Sankhara. Now let's get a bit of a perspective on Sankhara. So you have there's a diagram you see, right? So the diagram looks like this, for those of you in the video. This is a diagram showing the context of the 5 aggregates. If you look at 11 o'clock, you have consciousness, and then 1 o'clock contact. Of course, contact is not part of the 5 aggregates. You have feeling at 3 o'clock, perception at 5 o'clock, formations at 6 o'clock. These are the 4 aggregates, and then body and will form. Those are the 5 aggregates. So you can see this, the 5 aggregates working with other aspects of the mind, attention, intention, and so on. It describes how we become aware of things, how we function as a conscious living being. Now we can start anywhere. One of the easiest ways to start is, let's say, consciousness. Consciousness is the last topic, which is really profound. In fact, consciousness, we have one whole volume, which will continue after this. And this is what the modern scientists are discussing about. They're very fascinated by the Buddhist awareness of consciousness. Can you imagine for 2,500 years, the early Buddhism has been aware of the nature of consciousness as a very important aspect of Buddhist training, to understand the mind, to understand human nature, and to improve ourselves, to be at peace with ourselves. And only the last 100 years, Western science is beginning to discover that Buddhism, the Buddha, knows so much about the mind. Not only knows so much, but speaks very clearly. The terminology is very clear. Now this is very surprising, because if you read any of those books on Indian religion, you find in one word it is wordy, very wordy. Lots of words, and they will play around with words. And the Indians are very good with it. That's why there's a lot of philosophy, especially ancient India. But the problem is, once you play around words are beautiful, and you can even get excited and love and find, wow, these are very deep meanings. But ultimately, we have to ask ourselves that what happens to us when we look at all these words? Do we just become very pious and religious, and that's all? Which is not really helpful, because there are 2 issues, we should be aware of in Indian religion today. Number one is this recent reports of men taking advantage of women. Rape is so common in India. Group rape, gang rape, very common. Because the idea is, you see a woman alone, you take advantage of this woman. You see a woman scantily dressed, she's inviting attention, and so on. We don't see this kind of thing in Singapore, in Malaysia. Suddenly you begin to wonder whether a secular country is safer than a country which is very religious. So here, one way of explaining this over-attention to women, is over-sexualization of women, is the kind of religion, the kind of teaching that aspects of the religion deal with women as giver of pleasure, giver of babies. So in other words, it's a kind of categorization. Women have a place, this is their place, men like this. And this has been a big problem even since the Buddha's time. So imagine when the Buddha allowed nuns, it's a big thing. It's very big thing, nuns to get ordained. And in a sense, be treated almost as equal as the monks. That's almost because the nuns have to be protected in the way, because of the reasons I mentioned earlier. So this is where, in many ways, Indian religions need to be re-examined concerning their approach to women. Even Buddhism has to examine its approach to women. So these are ongoing dialogues, of course. So as long as we are willing to accept criticism and to change and to live with those criticism, I think Buddhism can be said to be a living religion, and we can contribute to social change and sexual equality, if you like. If not, then there will be more problems. And the second problem, of course, in Indian religion is this social classes, outcasts, upper class, and so on. And this is still there. Although we're talking about modern times, we're talking about democracy, freedom of religion, this reality is still there. Just to tell you a very simple story about nature of perception. An outcast had some legal problems with the Brahmin, so the case was brought to court. The Brahmin was lying, but this outcast said that the outcast said, "You're lying." And you know what the Brahmin, he argued back, he says, well, if you think I'm lying, why don't you touch me? There was some issue about all these things. So he said, why don't you touch me? If you dare you touch me, then I'm wrong. So this woman is so terrified, he just is unable even to, touch, he won't dare to touch. So this idea of categorization of class and caste is there. There's still, the lower caste still has this fear of the upper caste. So a man called Ambedkar did some good work, by they were deciding how can they break free from this Hindu caste system. The best way is to get out of the Hindu system. One way is to become Muslim, and another way to become Christians, but they thought that's not the right thing. Not good for them, there are other problems. So these Bahujans or Harijans, as they're called, the outcasts, they decided to become Buddhists. So Ambedkar was famous for this. And it's quite a difficult fight for them, So, because you can imagine in this kind of a system, this is worse than racial politics, it's religious racial politics. There is this tension. In fact, now they're quite strong, this outcasts were called Bahujans now. But that sense of fear, urgency is still there. My reflections reach this global now, and you reach some of them in India through this networking. Someone sends it to somebody sends someone else. So I like to use anglicized words. For example, I use the word dharma instead of dhamma, because dhamma you can't find it in the English dictionary. And if I were to stand before an English-speaking crowd who are foreigners, I say dhamma, they don't know what it is. If I say dharma, they're more likely to know what it is. So I'm using this word because the English word, nirvana, even the word Buddha are English words. Of course, they are previously Sanskrit words. Some words like Buddha are both Sanskrit and Pali, and this is called tatsama. It's the same. So I use the word dharma. I say the Buddha's dharma. I'm very proud of Buddha's dharma, and I got this email, from one of these Bahujan. He wrote a very strong letter, a few words. He says, use Dhamma, not Dharma, with big, huge, colorful letters and exclamation marks. So I look at it and say, wow, I was not angry at all about it, but we often ask ourselves, why did they write it in this way? They're trying to make a statement. So they went through a lot of suffering, because to them, Dharma means the Hindu code of conduct. The Hindu Dharma means you're outcast, you stay there, you're not supposed to come into our territory. We are high class because of that's the way God made us. That's Dharma, according to Hindus. So Ambedkar and the Bahujans is the word Dhamma, Pali. So this is it's a political thing. So of course, I can't accept such things. I mean, it's fine. If I was in India, I'd probably use Dharma. But globally, I think Dharma is still fine, because as long as we define our terms, you're fine. But you cannot make everybody happy when it comes to words. But one thing, if you attend tertiary education, you find your lecturers and professors will tell you, define your terms. So as long as you find your terms, you know what you're talking about, that's fine. So here we're talking about perception of term dharma, perception of term dharma, and so on. And if you see perception that way, that's fine. But we normally go a little further. We form ideas. We get upset. We feel angry. That aspect is called Sankhara. So we're coming to this topic. Right? So now once again, let's look at this diagram to see how everything fits in. So let's start with consciousness at 11 o'clock. We have our 5 senses. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body. And these senses are conscious, they're aware of things. The eyes are aware of light and shapes. The ear aware of vibrations, sounds. The nose aware of smell molecules. The body or skin aware of touch, contact, or resistance. And eye, ear, nose, tongue aware of taste molecule. So we experience sensations, external stimuli through these 5 physical senses. The mind also has its own experiences, so 6 senses. This is consciousness. This is how I see the world. Notice the 12 o'clock arrow, how I see the world. What does this mean? The world are our 5 physical senses. The world of light is what we see. That defines our perception of light. We see the world as light. With the world of sound is through how we hear sounds. So we form our world through the 5 senses. In the Sutta Sutta, the Buddha clearly says the all is or are the 6 senses: eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, their respective external sense objects, their respective 6 sense consciousnesses. These are sometimes called the 18 elements. This is our universe. This is our world. This is what we can know. This is all that we can know. And the senses are our instruments of knowing. Very neatly packaged, this is the Buddhist epistemology, theory of knowledge. So that's consciousness, how I see the world. Okay? For example, my eyesight's not very good now. I see you slightly hazy, and if I see far away, I probably can't recognize you. So if you see me on the roadside, you can see me kind of blur, my eyesight's bad. So when I look around, the world is blurring up. So that's my world now. Okay? I won't be able to see certain things. So when I go home, there are certain things out there which is beautiful and present. I probably will never be aware of it. It's very interesting. For example, the Red Indians, they are aware of the stars, the Pleiades, and those little stars in the sky. Whereas the white man, or maybe we can't see because we read so much about so used to city lights. So the Indians living in the place, they are more aware of the sky. So this is all how our world is, we define our world. Okay? So, next thing is we experience contact, sense impression. Right? You see the word passa, contact, through these 6 senses. Right? Eye, form, attention, we got contact. And then feeling arises as a result of this. This one has been so many times before, right? We don't just experience sensations. We don't just sense things. We respond or we react with feeling. Either I like it, I don't like it, or I don't care about it because I've not experienced this before. Last night we had a very interesting discussion in mental experiments with feeling. But there's a second Satipatthana in our Satipatthana Vipassana class. Yeah? It's a very wonderful class we had. So this feeling here, Vedana, has a very special, very important meaning in early Buddhism. So here when you hear the word feeling, don't jump into conclusion with your Western categories, then you won't get the fullness of the Buddhist idea and significance. Feeling is a very important way of knowing in Buddhist psychology. We know things through our feeling, Vedana. In fact, the word pati samvedeti, that's the verb. We can translate to feel, pati samvedeti, or we can translate it as to experience. Okay? So, we experience the world and then we judge. So this is very nice. This is not nice. Even the Buddha says that. Says, oh, Vesali is beautiful. But he stops there. He doesn't go further. Okay? How is it that he said Vesali is beautiful? Because it's very peaceful looking from far away. But for us, when we're not awakened, we go a little further. We say, beautiful. I want more of this. Like when we go shopping, we say, this is nice, I want more. Then, from perception, you go into Sankhara. The moment you say, I want this, desire arises. Latent tendency is being enforced. Then it's called Sankhara. So you have I've gone through here without pointing out perception of 5 o'clock, okay? And how I react to the world, perception. And then I create my own world, 6 o'clock. That's formation. You see, the word formation is very meaningful. You form your own world. And this teaching is very important in Buddhism, for human psychology, if you like. If we form our own world, ergo, therefore, we can unform our own world. We create all these wrong ideas, suffering, pains, through our own conditioning, through our own reaction to the world. Therefore, we can decondition ourselves. So these are the kinds of philosophy ideas where some of these avant-garde philosophers, forward-thinking thinkers of Europe and the West, people like Derrida, Jacques Derrida. So he's learned that Buddhism talks about deconditioning, unconditioning. He was so excited. In fact, his philosophy is very close to Buddhism. So in many ways, to be a Buddhist is to deconstruct ourselves. What does that mean? We've been brought up with certain kinds of ideas. We've picked up a lot of conditioning from friends, from teachers, from religion, listening to talks like this. I may tell you the best things I know, and I think I'm perfectly right. But the way you perceive it, the way you see it, can be quite different from my intention, and I have no control over that. You probably have no control over it too. Until one day, as you read through all these suttas, you begin to realize that, oh, this is what it really means. And you know what it really means. In other words, right view. Number one, you feel happy. You say, this is good. I feel happy. I feel peaceful. You're able to keep the precepts well. To keep the precepts well doesn't mean you're a goody-goody guy. It means you are in harmony with life around you. You respect people's property. You respect their person. You respect truthfulness. And you see the mind as a very important aspect of our lives. This is the basis of the good life. The minimum standards for being human, the 5 precepts. Minimum standard means there are higher standards. The higher standard is development of the mind. So when your mind is developed, then you are more at peace with yourself, the mind is clearer, and you begin to understand, okay, this is how things fit. Oh, this is what is meant by the world. Now I begin to see what dukkha means, and how dukkha arises, how suffering arises, why people hate the word suffering. And then you begin to understand, once you understand the arising, the conditions that make these negative states arise, you also begin to understand how to end it. And then, next thing is to put it into action, the Four Noble Truths. So, if you understand this, then the latent tendencies will not trouble you so much. The latent tendencies, anusaya. Anu means under. One meaning is small, under. Another one is meaning it follows you, after. Anu also means after, as in afterthought. Something that shadows you. And then saya means to lie, to sleep. It lies latent. You're not even aware of it. It's very close to the Western psychological idea of repression. We had all these terms long before Sigmund Freud thought of that. So, these latent tendencies are what keeps us suffering again and again. These are the bad genes, if you like. So, Sankhara works to reinforce the latent tendencies, which is really troubling. Later on, we'll look at how Sankhara works in the unawakened person, and then what about the arahats, the same. They have Sankharas, we'll look at that a little later. So now it's 6 o'clock, we have Sankharas, mental formations, mental constructions, and then because of that, we are motivated to do things. Our intentions become rooted in greed, hate, delusion. And that's how I approach my world. I approach my world through liking, disliking, and not caring. Things that I recall as giving me pleasure, I'm drawn to it. Things that I recall giving me pain, I push it away. Things I'm not aware of, for example, meditation peace, I don't care about it. Then your latent tendencies will be reinforced into greed, hate, delusion. The more you like something, the more you reinforce the first root, greed. The more you hate something unpleasant, the more you reinforce the second root, hatred. The more you ignore the third feeling, that is neutral feeling, the more you reinforce ignorance. So the 3 roots are reinforced that way. So you can see how the latent tendencies, the 3 roots are connected. So slowly you begin to see all the teachings fitting together like a giant network. So these 3 unwholesome roots are also the 3 motivational factors. For example, when we break the precepts, why do we break the precepts? Either because of greed, hate, or delusion. You can add a 4th quality, fear. Greed, hate, delusion, fear. Now, when you have these 4, they are called the 4 agati, the 4 biases. Through 4 biases, we tend to break the precepts. Anyway, coming back to this point, so what's your intention? You approach the world, you go to the world, and then your attention is directed to certain things. And then that contributes to consciousness, and it starts all over again. It goes round and round. So you can see latent tendencies at the bottom there, in the middle section at the bottom, and then the mind in the middle, mano, controls thinking and mental activity, and then the body, 5 senses. So this is more or less the description of how we function as human beings. Any questions on this? So now Sankhara comes from the prefix san. Now I'm looking at 6.1. San has the very similar sense as the Latin con or com, togetherness, putting things together, synthetically, synthesize. Khara comes from the word khara, meaning to do, to act, to work. So in other words, we work things, we put things together in our heads. You remember the diagrams we looked at earlier on? At the start, for those of you who missed it, let's look at the diagram again. Page 147. Kaniza's triangle. This kind of diagrams are very helpful. In case if you are not, you don't have a book, this is the one. This triangle. Okay? Kaniza's triangle. Okay? Now you see that. You see parts of the corners of a triangle, and then it's like Pac-Man, and they're put in such a way, our eyes draw lines, and you see another invisible triangle in the middle. There's no triangle there, but your mind forms it. You see, this is a beautiful illustration of how Sankhara occurs. You create something which is not there. In other words, when you hate someone, you will think, oh, this person's fault. Sankhara. If you are really worshipping somebody, idol worshipping somebody, no matter what it is, this person is always right. It is Sankhara. Okay? So this is one way of looking at it. It is not there, but you create it. I'm having a bit of not to say argument, a bit of complaint with Ajahn Brahmali, Ajahn Brahman. So they're putting it on sale. I don't know whether you heard about this or not. Ajahn Brahman on sale or for sale. Yeah, trying to raise some funds for the nuns. So I wrote to Ajahn Brahmali and said, this is very difficult to accept. How can you say a fund for sale? Of course, it's a tongue-in-cheek thing, British jokes, I say, yeah, I say it's a joke, but I don't know how many people here see it that way, So I can tell you, this is a very difficult thing for us to accept. So he says, well, please accept it as tongue-in-cheek. But like I said, I told her, I said, if you must explain it at length, it means it is controversial. So please think about it.
How are you planning to raise funds?
Well, he says Ajahn Brahman for sale is giving 2 weeks of his time to the highest bidder, the highest donor who gives money for the building of these premises or dwellings for the nuns. So the argument is that he's not actually any money himself, it's all going to the nuns' facilities, which is definitely noble, but I can tell you the monks in Wat Pa Pong and the other foreign monastery will not be happy. But he said, he won't care anyway, so I'm not troubled. I just say, maybe you're a very brave person, okay. But you're going to be very alienated. But somebody very powerful here said, well, if you're big and famous, you can do anything you like. So, okay, great, fine. And that I don't agree. So what I'm saying is, there are repercussions. So my point is this: we can easily get lay people to do all these things, And if we use the name of famous landowners, anyway. But my point is, I think I'm just following what Ajahn Sujato said. Silence is no option. If you think something is wrong, you got to speak up. Maybe one day someone will say, well, at least somebody spoke up. So this is where sometimes teachers are very successful. They may perceive things and say, it's okay for me to do this. Or the followers may think, oh, this teacher is so famous, he is so good, so advanced, his meditation, therefore whatever he does is good. It is also perceptions. I don't know whose side was wrong, but what I'm saying is very important to think of consequences, how it affects certain people. That's my point. So, Sankhara is very tricky. We see things which are not there, and we sometimes don't see things which are there. So we have to examine things very carefully. But one thing I can tell you, a lot of metta, loving kindness, compassion, things will somehow sort themselves out. Buddhism works that way. We like to say in Buddhism, we rectify things, we heal things. Like we don't punish people. Like that's a wonderful thing to say. Next thing is to really put it to practice. A lot of leaders simply go into this routine autopiloting of saying this thing, but they end up punishing people anyway. Now that would be rather tragic. It means you are just a zombie, This zombie idea is very real, In a way, you can say we are zombies, until we awaken. That is why Buddhism is a religion of awakening. Otherwise, we just walk, Sunday we just come, just the temple, chant, chanting finish, eat something vegetarian, and we go home, And then we just, we can react in some ways to certain things, and then especially we talk about going to some casino and gambling, you go to the temple, you talk about those things like that, So, we end up very autopiloted. Sankhara really taken over all these things, right? So we got to get out of this cyclic life. This cyclic life is samsara. Samsara means that. Sam, you can see the con, prefix con there, and then sara means to flow together, to flow in the stuck way, round and round, So at the end, we feel bored with Buddhism. And we blame Buddhism. So this is where it's better to really, do some simple meditation. You feel very happy, very joyful. Wherever you are, you feel joyful. That's the real Buddhist. And you don't even have to call yourself a Buddhist. Last week, I think, I sent out this reflection, or this week we'll be today we'll be sending out this new reflection. I like this reflection very much. It's based on Sankhara's thought. I don't know how many of you have heard of Sankhara. He's one of those atheists, very Buddhist influence. He says that to him, you got to go to Buddhism directly, the Dharma, if you like, directly. And what's preventing the Dharma from really having an impact on society at large is Buddhism. Or it says something like, the Buddha's teaching is trapped in Buddhism. It's a fantastic way of putting it. The Buddha's teaching is trapped in Buddhism. Meaning, it is hidden in the rituals and festivities, but the real thing is not done. So what he's saying is, we should really practice Buddhism. To him, he says that the best thing you can do as a Buddhist is to take it as a contemplative science. Those are his examples. So this is the new so-called Western Buddhism. They're coming up with this idea that Buddhism should be immediate, scientific, non-ethnic, things like that. Which is good for a Western situation. He says something like, if you look at Buddhism, the truth that the Buddha discovered, anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanence, suffering, non-self, they are universal truth. We all claim they are universal truth. Now, if they are universal truth, that means they are not just Buddhist truth. You can't call them Buddhist truth. But of course, we acknowledge the Buddha discovered them, definitely. But they are normal Buddhist truths. Because once you label them Buddhist, then it becomes a religion. Then you are stuck with it. Then you become ethnic. So there are two Buddhist groups now in the world. One are called the ethnic Buddhists, the traditional Buddhists. For example, you go to America, you go to Australia, you find there are Vietnamese temples, very big following there, Sinhalese groups, and so on, these ethnic groups. And they go to temple not so much for Buddhism, they go to temple more because they're Vietnamese, because they're Khmer, because they're Thais, whereas the other group is called the convert Buddhists. Convert Buddhists are the new thinking Westerners, or Westernized people. And they're more interested, what has Buddhism to offer me? The real thing, meditation. So when I was in Holland, I was in Malwijk, this Thai temple. And morning there was this dana offering. It was, I think, Asaha Puja Day, the day of entering into retreat. So all these Thai people came really nice. Oh, this is wonderful. I love staying in such temples, When I went to Perth, the retreat center, also this Thai community gave, I've been telling Ratna, I said, these are the kind of food I like. Can you imagine all the food you love all came in one day? And I told myself, I feel like a traitor. There's so many food there, and you can't eat everything anyway. You can only choose so much. I said, this is the parami, the good karma of the monks who live there. So this happened in Malwijk, in the Thai mission in Holland. So in the morning, the Thai community came and smelled gift stall. Oh, Dana is very good, and then chanted blessing, very happy. And then the monk announces, 1 p.m. meditation, okay? 12:30, all the Thais have disappeared. Not a single Asian left. And the Dutch and Europeans start coming, meditation. So you see, these are the two kinds of Buddhist groups now. Very interesting. Not to say they're good or bad, I just say these are the two groups you see, very common.
If I may comment, Buddhism has a much longer history in the East, and religion is cultural. So, so that is why you have the Vietnamese, the Sinhalese, but in the West it's fairly new. It's not become cultural. So, so therefore the Asian Buddhist centers have become also like a community, cultural, rather than just religion. I'm sure with time, the West will also start forming the same because it's inevitable route. It becomes part of their culture, you see. So in time also the same thing would happen.
So this is where Sankhara tries to go a little further. He says, can we avoid this? Can we avoid this acculturation of Buddhism? In other words, can we make Buddhism, for example, he says, the You know, modern physics started with people like Newton and so on, and they were Christians. The idea was to prove that God created the world, everything is so systematic, and Newton wanted to prove that using mathematics. So, in a sense, in a historical sense, physics started with the Christians. Algebra started with the Muslims. So, Sankhara says, but today, if you talk of Christian physics and Muslim algebra, people will say you're really out of date. You really do not know your subject. Nobody will talk of Christian physics and Muslim algebra. So, but what the argument is saying, there will come a time when we can't talk of Buddhist meditation anymore. It's just meditation, but we know the rules are in Buddhism. That's a very interesting notion. And for all you know, that is what will happen in the future. When people will see Buddhism is so useful, the meditation is so good, you can just practice it without the religious encumbrances. You know? Fine, but I don't think that will totally displace Buddhism. Just as physics didn't displace Christianity, nor algebra displaced the Muslims. So this is where, as Buddhists, you've got to think about this development very carefully and how do we respond to it. Okay? So one thing I can tell you is, as Buddhists, we practice our meditation. There are suttas, there are various aspects of meditation which science will not cover. Those aspects are very valuable to us. As to whether the scientific kind of meditation that's becoming popular now will give the same results as real Buddhist practice, I doubt so. But definitely, this modern kind of meditation will bring great peace to people, yes. But whether it'll bring awakening or not is not a matter. Okay, so coming back to Sankhara, when we talk about Sankhara, these are actions we do, and it is part of how we look at things. So this is where we have a very interesting 3 verses here, Dhammapada 277, 278, 279, where you see Sankhara being used in the first 2 verses and Dharma being used in the third. Sabbe Sankhara anicca ti, yada panyaya pasati atta nibindati ke esa maggo visuddhya. Meaning, all conditioned things are impermanent. All sankharas are impermanent. Who sees thus with wisdom is revolves and suffering. This is the path to purity. So my point is that there are 2 very important sentences. All conditioned things are impermanent. All conditioned things are suffering, dukkha. Sabbe sankhara anicca, sabbe sankhara dukkha. But the third one says sabbe dhamma anatta. The third one doesn't say sankhara, it says dhamma. So here we have a very interesting, very important philosophical note we must make. What does sankhara mean? What does dhamma mean here? This is very interesting because it shows that some of the monks today they have a clearer idea of what this means, especially the meditating monks. That is why I tell you occasionally I have to revise some of these things because new wisdom has arisen. Some of the things I wrote, this was 1 year, was the first time this came out was 2007. 5 years have passed. People like this Rahula, one of those modern monks. Modern monks say they don't keep the Vinaya rules. So he writes very nicely, beautifully, he's an academic monk. So he says, okay, Sankhara means conditioned things, Dhamma means unconditioned things, including Nirvana. So when we say all Dharmas are not self or non-self, that includes Nirvana also. Then a few years ago, Ajahn Sujato wrote an article on specifically these 3 verses. He says that's not the right interpretation. Sabbe dhamma anatta, all dhammas are not self, does not include nirvana. When we say all dhammas are impermanent, dharma here refers to phenomena and the principles underlying phenomena. Now this is not easy to understand. That's one reason why we need classes like this. I don't think if I tell this a crowd of 1,000 people, they will understand or even appreciate this concept. But to me, this is a wonderful revelation. You see, because Sabbe Dhamma refers to Phenomena and principles underlying phenomena. What does that mean? Now you have things you see around you through the workings of the mind, through your five senses. All these things you see, we know they are impermanent, they are dukkha. Why they dukkha? Because they are impermanent. If something nice, we say, wow, we want more, but we can't. If something is painful, we don't like it. That's dukkha. Sabbe dharma here means this phenomena we see around us and the conditionality that underlies it all. The principle here refers to the conditionality. The travelling, for example. How the mind functions. This is the conditionality. This, the process also, there is no self. It is nothing to do with self. Why is it that nirvana cannot be included here? For the simple reason, nirvana is not a category. Nirvana is not a thing, because dharma sometimes translated as thing. Okay? So if we say nirvana is a thing, then you have brought it into the world. Right? It's no more nirvana. This is one of the really tricky things in Buddhism. And one of the things that you can't disprove. You can talk about heaven, but nirvana, not so simple. Now let me try to elaborate on this. Now, we can describe things, long, short, here, there, we can give attributes to it. But once the fire, you can say fire is hot, the flame is this color, that color, okay? Magnesium flame is white in color, I hope I'm right with that. And some other metal burning of different colors, so we begin to identify them. But once the fire has gone out, you cannot give attributes anymore. You cannot say the fire gone north, east, south, west, above or below. So nirvana also is like that. You cannot give attributes to nirvana. The Buddha tries to meet us halfway by using language, as far as language permits us to talk about nirvana. Finger pointing to the moon. Nirvana is happiness. Nirvana is a cave. Nirvana is security. But those are just word pointers. So, and it's very often the Buddha tells us, remember this one, you got to tease out the meaning. It's not the final truth. So ultimately nirvana, you cannot give attributes to it. A simple example would be the joy you feel having read a beautiful piece of poetry, or looking at a beautiful painting, or looking at the sunset. How do you quantify this? How do you describe this feeling? So, nirvana is not a thing, nirvana is not a category. You cannot include it in dharma. You cannot say nirvana, definitely nirvana has no self. At the same time, you cannot say nirvana has a self either. If you say nirvana has a self, then you fall into the wrong view of what's called eternalism, sasatta duty. If you say nirvana has no self, then you fall into the wrong view of annihilationism. Either way. That's why it's called the middle way. So this is where people like Nagarjuna try to take the middle way and say you can't say either thing. So the idea, just imagine this flame going out. You cannot talk about it anymore. That helps us to understand Nirvana. So we cannot say Nirvana is self or no self. It's beyond categorization. So the Sabbe Dhamma Anatta refers to things, events, phenomena, and the principles behind phenomena. Dhamma also translated as principles. The conditionality behind these happenings we see around us. Okay? Now therefore I can say in 2 words. The rest you can read through that new piece of paper I gave you all, some things there. And there's a reference. Then you can go online and get the main article. Let me see if I can locate Sutta Discovery's article. His article is written in 2002, All Dhammas. And you can download it from his own website. Right? Page 170. In the bibliography near the bottom second last name, Sujanto Bante, 2002. The article is called All Dhammas. You can download this article. That's why I purposely put the URL for you also. Okay? Anyway, you don't have to go, you can go online, get this copy free. Can you see 170? Can you see second last name, Sujanto, 2002? That's the article, okay? The full article. Now, Nirvana is sometimes described as there's no coming, no going, no here, no there. In other words, it's beyond time and space. Once something is beyond time and space, you can't talk about it anymore. Right? So a physicist will understand it much better. Right? On the other hand, to exist means to change. And if we understand this fact and accept it, then we are with the flow. Then we won't be in trouble, so to speak. That is why the perception of impermanence is very important, very helpful for us as Buddhists. The perception of impermanence has changed my life in many ways. That is why I can sit here every week, but imagine every day if necessary, to talk about Dharma. Because if you don't feel joyful talking about these things, you either will stop talking or you go mad. But here I am, really, I just enjoy talking about these things. Even if one person comes, I'll still talk about it. If nobody comes, I put on camera, I'll talk to the camera and talk to the world as I'm talking to you now. I'm already dead by the time looking at me, but here I am still talking to you. Right? The wonders of modern science. So, this idea of impermanence helps us to, in a sense, go beyond all this prison of Sankhara perception. Because when we say something pleasant happening to us, all this is impermanent. We say we enjoy it, but at the same time we say, yeah, I have to let it go. It's just like going for a nice holiday. After that, the last day comes, we say, yeah, it's a nice place we have to live. But you still say, yeah, we have to live anyway. And once you're back home, you say, okay, well, this is Singapore, although it's quite a rotten place, stress and so on, but it's still okay, I still like it. So either way you're happy, because everything is impermanent. Right? So you find this teaching about Sankhara and Dharma all over the place. In the sutras, you can look up 6 to 1, the various meanings of Dharma is given there. The word Dharma has got a wide range of meanings. This is one of the problems with, maybe I should not say problem, one of the characteristics of Buddhist terms, Indian terminology even. The word Dharma is the most polysemic term that I know. Polysemic. Polysemic means multiple meaning, many meanings. Take the English word thing. Whenever you're not sure of a word, you say thing, that thing, this thing. That's Dharma. Dharma also means Buddha's teaching. We say Buddha Dharma. Okay? Dharma also means to the Brahmins their social code of conduct. The Chinese have their own word for it too. Because by Confucianism, you have five leads. You have this idea that certain codes, certain way of behavior of the women must behave like this, young men like that, children like that, parents like that, and king like that, and so on. Okay? And then Dharma also means quality, in the general sense of the word, abstract quality. Dharma means phenomena, things that happen around us. Dharma means worldly conditions, like the 8 worldly conditions. Dharma also means your action, kusala dhamma, akusala dhamma, right? Your, whether it's meritorious or very wholesome or unwholesome mental states. And then Dharma also means your mental state. So you examine the mental states in Dharma Vichaya. And Dharma also means mental phenomena, as in Dharma Ayatana. And aspects of Dharma are called Dhamma Dhatu. And Dharma can also be used as an adverb, like something Dharma, for example, anicca Dhamma, that is subject to change. And so on. So you have this word Dharma can apply so many cases. So, but when you see the context, you will know it. So, when we look at Sankhara, meaning what is formed in our minds, and Dharma, what is out there, or reality, if you like, the main thing there is the mind. The mind is able to distinguish these things, or at least that's how we want to train the mind, to be able to distinguish reality from unreality, or from false reality, virtual reality, if you like. And one way to reflect this, now I've already spoken about impermanence, right? Perception of impermanence. There is also a perception of dukkha, suffering, which is not so easy to practice, but you can if you are going through suffering. I like to tell people, especially people who come to counseling, they say they are suffering, why are they suffering? I give them two answers. Number one, I tell them, I say, you're suffering because you're good, you're kind, you're compassionate. We suffer because we are good, we are kind, we are compassionate, that's why we're suffering. Why? Because maybe people take advantage of that, or maybe we see there's so much injustice and pain around us, so we suffer. It's natural. It is why? Because it's not natural, it's unnatural to be bad or evil. So we being good, when we see that, we suffer. This is one way of explaining. Then, number two, we suffer, in a sense, it can be good if we accept the suffering as a teacher. This suffering as Dharma coming to us. Well, that's what happened to the Buddha, you know. The Buddha saw an old man, a sick man, a dead man. He could have said, my goodness, life is really suffering, you know. Let me go back and enjoy all these beautiful women in the palace. There'll be no Buddha. Right? He didn't run away from suffering. He asked, why must there be suffering? In other words, the three nimittas, the three signs, spoke to him. His first three teachers. And the fourth one showed him the way out, the holy man, you know? Happy, pleasant. Our suffering is telling us something. That part of our life is not right. First noble truth. Second noble truth, we ask, why did this happen? Third noble truth, the way out, and then work it out. So suffering is telling us something is not right. Happiness is telling us something bad is going to happen. Happiness telling you something bad is going to happen. You know why? If you think you're going to be happy all the time, and then you don't prepare yourself, suddenly it goes away and say, oh, where's my happiness? Now, I'm not trying to be negative here, I'm trying to show relativity of joy and pain. Joy is great when a joy is painful when it changes, goes away. Pain is good when it changes and goes away. So this is where the truth of impermanence is very healing. So if you understand the nature of impermanence, then either way you are happy. When you are happy, you are really happy on a higher level. When you are suffering, you are also calm and happy on a higher level. Because you can see deeper what's going on. Okay? I mean, if you teach Dharma, it is very important to you. Because not everyone's going to agree with you. Sankhara will get so upset that the teaching is good. But that's the way it is. I would rather be remembered after I'm dead, oh, that guy told the truth all his life, you know. And some of the things he said are unpalatable, but still, it's true. Rather than, oh, he said nice things, but I don't remember what he said now, you know. So the Dharma is not so easy to teach, so to speak, yeah. If you want to be popular, you're like a politician, don't teach Dharma. So here, so the third one is the most difficult perception to practice, non-self. Anicca, dukkha, easy to practice. Anatta, perception of non-self, very tricky. But there is a simple way of doing this. Do you remember the simple way? It's called not owning the pain. Not owning the pain. Next time, simple one is when anger arises, you tell yourself, number one, accept the anger. What it is. This is anger. Don't use I, me, mine. Not owning the pain, that means you let go of, don't use the words as much as possible, don't use the words I, me, mine. Anger is arising, acknowledge it. This is anger. And then, number two, you say, this anger is bad, negative. Dukkha. Right? Number 3, I do not want this anger. I'm letting go of it. Well, that's practice of non-owning of pain. And when I teach this to these people who come for counseling, they suddenly say, yeah, I feel good now. It is a fantastic way of healing. It's perception of non-self. Very simple level of practice. The Buddha teaches all these things. For example, you look at 6.2.4, the teaching of non-ownership. There's a set of suttas called the Na Tumhaka Sutta. Na Tumhaka, Na means not, Tumhaka yours, not yours, Sutta. Right? So there are a set of 5 or 6 suttas. I'll read to you one section here because it's very beautiful. Therefore, bhikshus, give up or let go what is not yours. Whenever you have given it up, when you have given it up, it would be for your welfare and happiness for a long time. What is it that is not yours? Form is not yours. Give it up. Page 160. 160. Top. Feeling is not yours. Give it up. When you have given it up, it would be for your welfare and happiness for a long time. Perception is not yours. Give it up. When you have given it up, it would be for your good and welfare and happiness for a long time. Formations are not yours. Give them up. When you have given them up, it will be for your welfare and happiness for a long time. Consciousness is not yours. Give it up or give them up. When you have given it up or given them up, it will be for your welfare and happiness for a long time. So here it means we really have no control over these things. We don't have full control over our perception, our consciousness. We can be with it, we can adjust it a bit perhaps. How we respond to it can be adjusted. So this is the reflection. Then the next, another set of teachings, and another way of reflecting it is nothing is worth clinging to. Nothing is worth clinging to. Notice, let's say you have not watched a movie before, this great show is coming. You're really excited you want to watch it. And it finally comes, so excited to sit down there and you watch this show. And then when the show is over, you say, oh, it's not what I expected. You don't want to watch it again anyway. You notice, you see how this expectation, right? So nothing is worth clinging to, all right? So this again, there's another sutta, taught to Moggallana and so on. Reading 6.2.5. 6.2.5. 160. When this was said, the Venerable Mahamoggallana said this to the Blessed One. In what way, Bhante? In brief, Moggallana is very careful, it's called Bhante. In brief, he doesn't want to give a long discourse.
I'll see that too.
He is a monk liberated through the destruction of craving, that is, one who has reached total perfection, the total security from bondage, the total holy life, the total consummation, the highest amongst gods and humans. The Buddha replies, here Moggallana, the monk has learned that nothing is worth clinging to. And Moggallana, the monk has learned that nothing is worth clinging to. Thus, he directly knows all things. He directly knows the nature of the all. The all, that is the way the senses work. Having directly known the nature of all things, he fully understands all things. Having understood all things, he knows whatever feelings there are, whether pleasant, painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. And after that, the process of awakening follows. Okay? Now we come to a new area. We talk about, normally Sankhara is in the plural. Sankhara with a long R, Sankhara. Yeah? So now we're coming towards the end of this text, right? And don't worry about where it is, just listen first and later I'll tell you. When you're unawakened, normally the word Sankhara is a plural formation because it never rains but pours. It's really the case. Sankharas just come. Lots of ideas. Okay, flood of ideas. So what's the difference? Do the arahats have sankhara or not? This is still a new area. For example, Susan Hamilton, she did a PhD in fire aggregate. So she came to the conclusion that arahats do not have sankharas anymore. And then other people are getting another more savvy, seasoned Buddhists, they say, no, that's wrong. Arahats do have Sankhara, singular, Sankharo, okay? Because if you say that Arahats don't have Sankhara, you're saying effectively the Arahats are mindless. If you have no mind, you won't live, you won't exist, you can't function. So what's the difference then? Sankhara and Sankharo. Now we know this because it's mentioned in Chula Vedala Sutta, for example. Right? Let me see whether I have that text here. Chula Vedala. Yeah. Anyway, it's section 9, it's all there. Okay? Page 167 onwards. No? Now, when we say Sankhara or Sankharo singular, that means you see the process, the mental process going on. For example, let's say you are an Arahat and I'm talking to you, you know I'm talking to you. You are aware of that. You might even know, you say, okay, this person, no, you wouldn't say this person is controversial. You will say, people think he's controversial. Right? And the next thing is, you will still listen to me and you will hear what I say and you'll respond accordingly. Okay? And for us monks, try to behave like that. Whenever you talk with them, they will listen to you. That is, you have the chance to go near them. Okay? And otherwise, you do it long line when you talk to them. So they try their best to respond that way. The money monks are too busy, so if you come with a big chat, they will talk to you. So that's different. Okay? So these arahats, they have no opinions of you. So there is Sankhara, no opinions. They're able to listen to you, they can understand what you're saying, so Sankhara works. Alright? For example, you say, I'm in pain, and then maybe they ask you what kind of pain, you know, right? So because they want to, they can get feedback from you. But they won't form either. They say, what a stupid guy this is. No, you never study Sutta, that's why you're in pain. They don't have that kind of, that is our Sankhara. That is ours. But the others don't have that kind of Sankhara. You see my point now? Okay? In a sense, the idea of being a counselor is very much follow this principle, where you try not to judge people. You respond accordingly. Okay? So you notice how in doing good, we try to approach this high spiritual level in Buddhism. That's why you have rules in counseling. Don't judge people, accept them as they are, and try to listen to them and then help them that way. Buddhism is already doing this. So this is all found in this last part of the talk on the Sankhara, page 169, for example. Let me read 9.4 for those who don't have the book. 9.4, page 168. It should be understood that Sankhara is a very broad term. Here, Sankhara is a stand term, so it can mean either plural or singular. It's a stand word, that's the way the dictionary will list it. The most important aspect of Sankhara in an unawakened person is volition or the will. For the sake of convenience, we can use that word. Here, the will is simply the doer or the true agent behind the actor, the mind controlling us, in other words, our past karma mostly. In other words, as unawakened beings, we do not really have free will, but act or not act as our past karma and habitual tendencies dictate. The Arahat and non-returner to some extent has or have a stronger will against the use of, again here we're using this word for convenience, the Arahat and non-returner, they have a will too. In other words, they have full control of themselves, so that they are not subject to any karma or habitual tendencies. The Arahat has uprooted all of them. Okay? Using textual language, Sutta language, we can say that Arahats and non-returners to a great extent do not have any mental formation, mano sankhara. They do not have the plural aspect of sankhara. Okay? They don't think, worry like the way we do. They have only thought formations. This is the big interesting difference. No mano sankhara, but they have chitta sankhara. In other words, their mental processes like the one we have has ceased to be normal sankhara. We never think, oh, this is very nice, I want this. The kind of mental mano sankhara is called. Chitta sankhara is that, meaning If I'm talking to you, you hear me, you make sense of the word, you understand what I'm trying to say. So thought processes, normal thought process still working, neutral. We might say that they have a singular mind, one that is focused in mindfulness and wisdom, naturally responsive with compassion. I mean, if you accept people just as they are, then you have compassion. This is, in fact, surely, that is focused in mindfulness and wisdom, naturally sorry, I mixed up the line. This is, in fact, surely one of the senses of Ujjupatipanna, straight in conduct. He is a straight person, so to speak. He won't lie to you, he's direct to you, you can speak directly to him or her, and you have no fear speaking to such a person, such a saint. We might then say that an Arhat is a will-free person, a truly liberated individual. For will entails thinking and planning based on the likes and dislikes. Something that the Arhat and the non-returner to a great extent have transcended. The Arhat is awakened because he has overcome the most vital aspects of Sankhara, that of the will or volition as karma. The Arhat, in other words, is an unintentional person, a spontaneous individual who truly goes with the flow and yet moves against the world's currents. The Pali Vimansana Sutta describes the Arhat as follows. When he neither creates nor forms volitional formation, he does not cling to anything in the world. Not clinging to anything in the world, he is not agitated. Not agitated, he attains nirvana by himself. He understands that destroyed is birth. The holy life has been lived. What needs to be done has been done. There is, for me, no more of arising in any state of being. The Theravada 90 speaks of the elder Samhidatta in these words. Panchakhanda parinyata kitanti chinnamulaka vikino jati sansaro nati dani punabhavoti. The five aggregates fully known stand with roots cut off. The cycle of birth is utterly exhausted, there is no more rebirth here. Okay? So the Arhat is totally free from the five aggregates, but he has just enough confirmation to communicate with us. No more karma, no more rebirth. So that ends our study of Sankhara. Any questions?
I have a question on
Yes.
the slip of paper,
Yeah.
page 156.
156.
The slip.
Yeah, sure.
The loose slip.
Okay.
277. It says all conditioned things are impermanent.
Yeah.
Then we go back to 6.12 above that. Above that, the paragraph,
6.12. Okay.
the last line.
Mm-hmm.
It says the adjective condition means subject to change, condition.
Okay.
So when we say all conditioned things are impermanent, to me it seems to be like saying the same thing but not answering, not explaining what.
Sankhara and what's the other word?
No. I'm talking about this sentence also. That says all conditioned things are impermanent. And then above that it says the adjective condition means subject to change. That means impermanence.
Yeah.
So when we say
Yeah.
all conditioned things are
Yes, it
we are
appears so.
saying that all impermanent things are impermanent.
Yeah, so tautology.
But it doesn't explain what
Yeah.
conditioned things are. So
Yeah.
can you explain?
Okay, sure. I think Sankhara is a noun, so the meaning is conditioned things, right? So when you say all conditioned things are impermanent, we are explaining the word. Because the word itself has no meaning unless we put meaning into it. Okay, of course, I've done study for so long, yeah, I know, I see the word Sankhara, oh yeah, okay, conditioned thing, because the adjective Sankhata means condition, Asankhata means unconditioned. So, and if you ask us, how do you define unconditioned? It means it is not subject to the first two characteristics, especially, right? So although it is not subjected to the first two characteristics, the third characteristic still applies. Very interesting, you know? Non-self. When you say non-self, even unconditioned things are non-self. So only the two of the characteristics apply to sankharas. That's why the term is dharma. So there is a certain limitation to the term, so to speak. So, but to say sankhara is convenient because it covers a very important area. The whole world is called sankhara. But in order to talk about it, you've got to apply some words. It is impermanent. And not only impermanent, other words. Well, of course, when they put together, yeah, you find a lot of this kind of repetition in the religious language of the early Buddhist texts. For example, say dukkha is painful. Of course, it's obvious. Here, because the Buddha has been stating the obvious first. I don't know, maybe in legal language you find certain things that you must define certain terms very clearly. So dukkha is painful. If someone says dukkha is pleasant, something's wrong. Unless there is a follow-up. Dukkha, so someone tried to trick the Buddha and says, when is dukkha pleasant? The Buddha replies, when dukkha passes away. It's pleasant. Okay? So this is the problem with words. Yeah, sometimes they appear tautological, they appear to repeat itself. But the purpose is the effect. In our minds is we say, okay, impermanent. So the idea of impermanence settles in our mind. After that, we don't bother about the words. You notice, we read millions of words, you know. What happens to us? A certain idea, a certain effect on us. We don't remember those words. We are not affected by the words, we are affected by the sense of the words. So we've got to get the sense of the tease out the sense of this word. Okay? Any other question?
Sorry,
Yeah, sure.
trying to understand this, can we put it the other way to say that impermanence is due to certain conditions, turning around, and
You can say
unsatisfactoriness is due to certain conditions,
yes, definitely.
whereas non-self is not subject to any condition. Can you turn it around?
Yeah, you can explain it. As explanation, yes.
But it still doesn't define condition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what are these conditions?
Yeah, so you're explaining it. You can say differently by way of explaining.
You're stating only the cause
Yeah.
and the results of condition.
Then you got to go back.
It doesn't define condition.
You still got to go back
But
to that.
if I may, conditions to me, to my mind, means exactly that in plain English.
There are conditions.
Okay, that's very plain. That's very plain, all right. Yeah, okay. Nothing can be more plain than that.
I know it sounds really oxymoron. Yeah, because of certain set of circumstances. I take it conditions to mean a set of circumstances, whatever the circumstances may be, habits, whatever, the environment, or even the results of past actions, karmic, so to speak. So I take conditions to mean circumstances.
Yeah. We're talking about reality. Reality is all around us. How do we talk about it? We can talk it in terms of conditionality. Conditions.
Conditionality doesn't mean.
In the sense that the words that we
Yeah, conventional words.
convey something that's beyond something that's beyond something that words can convey. So like what the Buddha was teaching, all his teachings, every single thing that he taught was actually a religious convention used to convey nirvana, which is beyond conventional words, that which is beyond statements. That's why the convention that he set for is actually a path of practice for us to practice, to come to know for ourselves what nirvana is. Because like when I say a word love, we all brought up in different families. So in a sense, we have different conventions in our head of what love is, and we all perceive that as different things. But what I gather is when he says conditions, all conditions are impermanent. It's also translating for me that all conventions that we perceive are permanent.
Okay.
And I don't think the word conditionality is a proper English word. I think it's an American word.
Is it? The Buddhist is
It's like saying functionality. I said, oh,
yeah,
I don't think that exists in
yeah,
observationality. It's
quite
American. They
no,
just
I think conditionality does exist in the OED. It does. It means, because otherwise you have to use the word conditionedness, which sounds even more strange. You know what I mean? Because it's LET, ET actually, ITY, it shows activity. Conditionality means the activity of something conditioned. Whereas if you say ness, it is a state, usually. Okay? But anyway, words are how you define it. So, I know, I tried to avoid all these long words, so use a short word better. But anyway, the Pali would be Sankhara. Any other statement or questions? No more, So, looks like we have one more lesson to go, and then we'll come up with a new book. Just checking. One more sutta, right? Oh, one short sutta. Oh, actually it's finished already. Oh, I might as well finish the sutta. It's a very short one. Page 172 and 173. This is a story about a chariot maker, and he has made 2 wheels. One wheel was in a hurry. The other wheel is he did it over 6 months, so very well made. And this very well made wheel moved very nicely. Because the king wanted to go to war, so he tells his charioteer, make me 2 wheels, for his chariot. The first wheel he did very fast. The other one took 6 months. So the one he did very fast wobbled. It didn't work well. So let me just read through it very quickly. I'll start with once the Buddha was staying in Benares, and we go down to the story. The Buddha tells one of those Jataka stories found in the Sutta. So this is called a canonical Jataka story, page 172. Once upon a time, you got that?
Yeah.
Once upon a time, bhikshus, there was a Raja or king named Pachetana. Now bhikshus, the Raja Pachetana addressed the chariot maker thus: Master chariot maker, 6 months from now I will go into battle. Can you make a new pair of wheels for me, Master chariot maker? Chariot maker says, okay. And then further down, 10 months, when 6 months less 6 days. So 54 days, had passed, the chariot maker finished but 1 wheel. Then bhikshus, the Raja Pachetana addressed the chariot maker thus: Master chariot maker, 6 days from now I will go into battle. 6 days, okay? Have you completed the new pair of wheels for me? Your Majesty, says the chariot maker, during the 6 months less 6 days, only 1 wheel is completed. But Master chariot maker, will you be able to complete the second wheel within 6 days? The chariot says, okay, he can. Alright, so he does. So what it took 50 over days, the second wheel took only 6 days. Right? So you got 2 kinds of wheel. Now comes the clincher, so to speak. So the king says, okay. He looks at the 2 wheels. He says, but further down. He says, but Master charioteer. Can you see that? But Master chariot maker, I see no difference. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. I see no difference at all between this wheel completed 6 months ago and this wheel completed in 6 days. They look the same. There is a difference, Your Majesty. Let Your Majesty look, said the chariot maker. Then bhikshus, the chariot maker, sat rolling the wheel completed in 6 days. It kept rolling as long as its momentum lasted, then circled around and fell to the ground. Then he sat rolling the wheel completed in 6 months. It kept rolling as long as its momentum lasted, and then stood still, as it were, you might say, firmly fixed on the axle. So it didn't fall, it rolls and then it just stops at the end. That is the perfect wheel, so to speak. So the question now is, why is it like that? It says because the wheel that's made over 50 days, everything is balanced and proper. Whereas the wheel that is rushed, it's a slight imbalance, so it falls easily. So here, the Buddha is telling this story and then he tells the Dharma aspect of it. So now section 4. You might think, bhikshus, that the chariot maker was someone else. So the Buddha says, actually, I was the chariot maker in the last life. Okay? And then he explains, then bhikshus, I was skilled in regards to wood that was crooked, to wood faulty or flawed. Now bhikshus, I, as an arahant, truly awakened one, am skilled in regards to crookedness of body fault, of speech, of the mind, all the three laws of action. So in other words, he knows nature of karma. So here, in other words, in the earlier part, the Buddha explains the wheel which is completed in a short time is faulty. So someone with bad karma, he may look just as someone with good karma, but you can, by watching his action, body, speech and mind, you will know the difference. He will fall, so to speak, like a wheel. Where someone who is well trained, at peace with himself, all the three doors are calm and clear. Like the good wheel, the 5 months over wheel, carefully made, the wheel rolls, and then when at the end it stands still. It's just like a true practitioner. He practices very peacefully, moves through life harmoniously, and then comes to a standstill. That's Nirvana. So it's a very beautiful wheel analogy. Okay?
Sorry, what's the crooked wheel and
not crooked wheel, the wheel which is still fault. They look the same, but the faulty wheel, the axle not properly measured, the wood not properly put together, and there's a not proper balance. But when you see from the outside, the untrained eye, you won't notice it. But once you roll it, right? Roll means you go into action. How you conduct yourself, you begin to see the action of karma. So this analogy of how the bad will show the karma through body, speech and mind, and the good too will show the karma through body, speech and mind. The good person is like this perfect wheel who moves harmoniously and then comes to standstill when karma ends. Whereas in the case of the bad guy, the wheel wobbles and then it will fall. So in other words, that karma will fruit. Okay? So
you mentioned the three doors. What are the three doors?
body, speech and mind. Body, speech, three coming doors. Three expressions of karma.
Is there also a lesson in time here that means if you want to be good, you need a lot of time to be good?
Yes, we can also add
6
on.
days against 6 months.
That's right.
Because there's
Rushing.
You can't be very good over
Yeah, that is a good story to tell people. So they want quickly to get progress in the meditation.
instant cure.
Okay. So next week we'll look at part 2. Part 2 is dedicated to consciousness. Very interesting topic. Any other question? No more. So we'll end here with reflection. Right. We have completed our study of volume 17A on the first 4 aggregates, and we have been coming here with the intention of keeping our mind at peace, and cultivating some wisdom. That thought alone is a very wonderful, good thought, good karma. And today also is Mother's Day, so we want to dedicate the study to all the mothers that are present here, and also mothers everywhere, that they may be well and happy, that they raise good, happy children, that the children are grateful and joyful to them too. At this moment, by the power of all this good karma, may our own minds be at peace, maybe quickly and easily get mental focus when we meditate, and in our daily lives our minds will be at peace. And most important of all, in this life itself we will attain spiritual liberation, at least street winning. In this moment of peace that has sent out our loving kindness to this whole place, to all the people here, to all those who work here, who contribute to the success and happiness of this place. To all the teachers who teach the Dharma, that they too may attain spiritual awakening. And to all those who Dharma have not touched, that they may see the Dharma in themselves and be truly happy and good. May all beings be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu.